The TeraFlex high-angle Rzeppa CV Driveshaft combines the benefits of the smooth torque transfer found in CV-style joints with a unique high-angle boot designed for extreme driveshaft angles associated with larger lift kits. The heavy-duty construction of the laser-welded carbon steel tubes creates a low-profile driveshaft, which provides increased clearance when driving off-road. To begin the installation process, support the front axle and remove the front factory driveshaft. On the axle, there are 4 bolts holding the driveshaft to the yoke. To see the transfer case end of the front driveshaft with the camera, we move the TK skid plate out of the way. The driveshaft on this particular JK has had the factory CV joint replaced with TeraFlex's high-angle Rzeppa CV replacement joint. So to loosen the bolts on this joint, we are using the provided hex socket tool that comes with the TeraFlex high-angle Rzeppa CV driveshafts. Installation for the front driveshaft requires you to replace the yoke on the front axle. Before removing the yoke, use an inch-pound torque gauge to check the torque needed to rotate the pinion. It should be pretty close to what you see here, but I won't give you a specific number because it might be a little different on your vehicle. Once you have this number, remove the yoke. Apply silicone in an even bead around the splines of the new yoke and slide the yoke into place. Use red thread locker on the new nut and feed it onto the pinion. Tighten this nut down in small increments, only about 5 foot-pounds at a time, until the torque required to rotate matches the original value. Be very careful not to over-tighten the nut because doing so can damage the crush sleeve. If the crush sleeve is over-crushed or damaged, you will need to reset the pinion's preload with a new crush sleeve, which requires that the entire differential be removed. We definitely don't want you to do that. Now that the yoke is installed, we can put the TeraFlex high-angle Rzeppa CV driveshaft into place. Put the end with the boot towards the transfer case. Using the provided tool, tighten down the bolts in small increments until all the bolts are tightened evenly. Install the axle end of the drive shaft onto the new yoke, following the same process. Make sure all the bolts on both ends are torqued to 15 foot-pounds. It's very important that all the bolts are tightened evenly. Support the rear axle and remove the factory drive shaft. Loosen all the bolts on the axle end first, and then the transfer case end. Off the transfer case end free using a pry bar. An easy way to remove the axle end is to rotate the drive shaft and push down on it as you do so. Only do it this way if you plan on discarding the drive shaft. As both the transfer case and the axle already have the CV joint yokes, you can simply install the new TeraFlex high-angle Rzeppa CV rear drive shaft. Feed the bolts onto the axle end, just enough to hold it in place, and then install the transfer case end. Use the provided tool, and remember to tighten the bolts down evenly, just like the front. Tighten the bolts to 15 foot-pounds. A trick you can use on the rear drive shaft when you're torquing the bolts is to disconnect the transfer case and switch it to neutral. This only works on the rear drive shaft, but it makes things easier when you're torquing. Just remember to reconnect everything once you're done. Using the same process, tighten down the axle end of the rear drive shaft. That's really all there is to it. One important thing on the maintenance side is to periodically check for grease leakage or boot damage, especially if you go off-road often.